Welcome to the video version of Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter. Here's the overall site. It's at kencousin.substack.com. I don't tend to point that out because this is the video version of the newsletter, but that's the homepage for the newsletter itself. If I go into this week's newsletter, the title is Magic Man Almost Gets Arrested, which is a great story. Connecting Java to the Dall-E image generator, other AI projects, and the usual collection of silly Toots and Skeets and whatever else you might have. The subtitle this week is My Doctor Told Me I Was Colorblind. Wow, that came completely out of the green rim shot. Yeah, okay, not the best, but I suppose it'll do. So, welcome fellow jarheads to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of August 27th to September 3rd, 2023. Today's the 4th. Last week, I held a YouTube live stream with Michael Carducci, and I released a video excerpt from it. I didn't get a technical video out. I'm working on a couple of them, mostly related to AI. Partly, I want to talk about accessing AI with regular Java, and I'm also working on one where I do this with the Spring Framework, which I imagine a lot of people will be interested in. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter, are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and especially attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button. Of course, mine's already subscribed. I should take this opportunity to see how the YouTube channel's doing. So if I go to youtube.com/@talesfromthejarside, it appears that I now have 642 subscribers. So growing, not as fast as it was growing before, but still on the way up. I guess that's pretty good. You'll also see, and this is going to be something I'll highlight in the newsletter, that I have the nice little excerpt video here. Magician Michael Carducci nearly gets arrested in the UK. Also, starting last week, I started putting an actual thumbnail on these newsletter videos. So the one this week will have a very similar thumbnail on it, just changing the bullet points inside. And then we'll see how that goes in the future. If I go under the live streams, that's where you'll see Michael's live stream, the one where I talked to him for about an hour and 20 minutes or so. Okay, let's come back. So speaking of that live stream, there's the embedded version of the live stream if you're interested, and he is an interesting character. There are a lot of people in IT who come from, shall we say, non-traditional backgrounds that move through life and then suddenly decide, no, I'd rather be a developer or something like that. And it's also the case that every developer knows a couple other developers who do not have classic IT-related college degrees or anything like that. They pick things up on their own, they learned on the job, and they're excellent at it. So, this is a field that is rather open to people coming from outside. Heck, I guess if you think about it, I'm one of them. I was a career changer in the late 90s when I switched from my job as, a research scientist in aerospace engineering over to, what is basically IT. At any rate, there's the live stream. And then what I did is I took the live stream and I imported it into the Descript tool. I use the Descript tool occasionally. I really like it, except that it's got issues. It's got a lot of nice AI things built into it. For one thing, it's very good about transcribing video, so you can get a decent transcript out of it. But then its biggest feature, of course, is that you can edit the transcript, and that edits the video. But it also has things like auto-generating studio sound. It can clean up the sound that's in there, removing any noise in the background. It can remove pauses and filler words like and ah or whatever. It's very good about that. It can shorten word breaks if you want, word gaps, I suppose I should say, if you'd like to eliminate some of those. There's a lot of nice features. This time I imported it in. I broke the section I wanted to talk about into segments, or what they call scenes. Added a bunch of little video snippets and images, and even used their built-in text-to-image generator to generate the images that I couldn't find in their standard library. The image generator was okay, not great, certainly not Midjourney, probably not even Stable Diffusion, or if it is, it's not Stable Diffusion XL, which is really good. It's probably an old version of Dall-E for all I know. I don't really know for sure. At any rate, I did it though, and the overall story came out to be approximately 10 minutes, but it's really entertaining. So I do highly recommend that. I don't want to give any more spoilers than are on the thumbnail, so I'll just say that and move on. So the part down here was discussing how I used Descript to do that work. If you're interested, I'll have a link in the description, not just to Descript, but I actually have an affiliate link in case you're interested in buying a subscription or anything like that. It doesn't change anything on your end, but what the heck, I have an affiliate link, I might as well share it with you. But you're under no obligation, of course. This was one of the images I wound up generating. Incidentally, I just needed a street sign in the UK, and it didn't have anything on street signs in the UK. And I'm like, okay. So I generated one that was low and partially obscured by, as Michael said, shrubbery. So there's that. And as long as you're not trying to figure out what that actually says, I mean, it's like Merced or something. I have no idea. That was the image I generated. Okay, let's move on to our next section. So speaking of image generation, especially with Dall-E, I've been working on a set of videos for integrating these AI tools into Java, or maybe it's the other way around, using Java and adding the AI tools through them. And I've been mostly focusing on the OpenAI API. The OpenAI is the parent company that owns ChatGPT and that family. They also have a product called Whisper, which is a video to text generator. It's, I guess the right word is transcription there. It transcribes the text from the video, although they also do translation, but I'm not qualified to assess the quality of that, so I haven't played with that one at all. The bottom line, and I guess I should finish that by saying OpenAI also manages Dall-E, one of the first major text to image generation tools to hit the popular media, although hardly the best. I mean, it's okay, and nowadays we look upon it as fairly primitive. I don't know if they're working on it anymore, but it is available, and it's available through the same API. And from a Java point of view, as far as I'm concerned, these are all just RESTful web services. So as long as I have an HTTP client and I have a JSON parser so that I can parse and generate JavaScript object notation from Java records or classes, then I'm good. So I put something together in my GitHub repository, the one I've been building up in my other videos, on accessing Dall-E. Now that turned out to be surprisingly simple in parts. One part is that if you look at this curl example, which comes from their documentation, then you see, I know it's a little hard to see here, so I'll just tell you, they have a JSON object in the request that simply has a prompt, an N, which is the number of images you want, and a size, which is one of 3 different sizes they support, all square. So as I say here, you put in the text prompt, the number of images you want, one of the valid sizes, 256 by 256, or 512 or 1024. And then the response is also very simple. You get back this object that has a created timestamp in it, and then data is an array of little JSON objects that simply contain a URL. So that's really simple, and therefore I could just write out what I want the records to look like in my Java. Now here I've listed them as an image prompt and an image response and an image. I've since changed that to image request, but same idea. I've got the prompt, the size, and the integer in there, and then there's the created and the array of image, which I'm probably going to switch to a list of image, but that's all right. And that's it. That's the record. So that's what I want to map to. So I need to submit a post request with the authentication parameters in it, and then get back a response and then serialize it. But what I did this week, and I haven't written the video about the old one, so anyway, what I also did this week is started playing with the HTTP interfaces from Spring Boot as a way to access this. And that considerably simplifies all the infrastructure. as Spring will do. So for example, I have an interface now called OpenAI interface. It's annotated with HTTP exchange, and then I do a post exchange to get image response with an image request in the request body, and I get back an image response, and I don't have to write any of the code for the web client. Spring will generate all that for me. I do have to configure a web client as a bean, and that's what this little block of code does. I have a bean defined that will take a base URL, and it will auto wire in the base URL I need, configure a web client builder with the authorization header in it and the content type, set the base URL, and then wrap that through that HTTP service proxy factory thing to get back my client. I mean, most of this is just boilerplate, just copy and paste each time. I expect that'll get simpler. Now, if you use a tool like Micronaut or probably Quarkus, although I don't know, even that is already built in. So I expect Spring will eventually have that built in too, but not yet. At the moment, again, it's simply boilerplate, nice and easy. And therefore, what I did is I wrote a test for that interface. Normally, I don't test generated code, but here I wanted to see, this is my test as an alternative way of actually executing the code. I just want to get back an image. So I auto wire in that interface. I created a little factory method to generate the image prompt just to make it simpler. And also I have some overloads that set the int to 1 and set the size to default size or whatever. And my prompt is a photo of a penguin wearing a Batman suit fighting crime in the Antarctic. So then I just get back the response, and what I'm doing in this picture, it's a little different. I keep evolving it, but when I get the video together, you'll see, is I'm looking at all of the images that come back, the URLs, and writing them to a file now and looking at them. But here I'm just asserting that the image URL has the .png in it, brings back a ping file. I've since updated this so that now I get back base 64 encoded JSON data in the body of the request, and I can simply decode that and write it to a file all in one method, and that way I don't lose the images. The challenge, and this is what cost me hours, because there's been things that have cost me hours multiple times on this project, is the one special line here up in the configuration that says, see this one that says .block timeout. Again, if I click on it, I don't think it helps. Oh, actually, that one's not bad. So .block timeout of a duration here. It turns out that the default duration is 5 seconds, I believe. And that's not enough for a blocking call like this that's actually going to Dall-E and saying make an image. I mean, it's not too long to make an image, but it's certainly longer than 5 seconds. And I kept getting timeout errors, and I couldn't figure out why. And it turns out all I had to do was bump up the duration, and the errors went away. I kept thinking I was doing something wrong, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was, again, simply that I wasn't waiting long enough for the response to come back. So yeah, that cost me hours. Here's one of the images I got back. I mean, not much Batman related, although that penguin does look like it's ready to battle crime, I've since got a bunch of better images than that, but so be it. And the other thing is that the price for OpenAI is by the request, and for text requests, it's really fractions of a penny in general, but for image requests it can be as much as 2 cents an image if you're getting a 1024 by 1024 image. So I've spent, well, it says 45 cents in all the work I've done since then too, and playing around with the Spring app. I've spent over $1 in September already. So good thing I didn't give up my day job. So at any rate, there will be videos about a lot of this. Let's move on to the next section. I've mentioned that I clearly don't have enough to do, so I basically have gotten a position where I'm a, what do they call it, visiting assistant professor at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. That's about half an hour from me. And I'm going to be teaching a course in the fall called Software Design, which sounds interesting. I don't know how it's going to go. It's been a long time since I've taught sophomores and juniors in college, but what the heck? I mean, it should be fun, and it'll be nice to see people over an extended period again rather than my normal training classes, which are all over in a week. But last week I picked up my ID, so I'm official now. So there's that. I tried to obscure the ID and the barcode, but they're there. That also means I'm committed, or should be, right? Feel free to speculate on how long it'll be before I say I am too old for this stuff. A month, 2 months, the first day, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it did remind me of a time I taught a training class at a financial institution that I won't mention, even though they're not going to remember me at all. But their security procedures were so incredibly annoying just to get in the building to teach the class, even though I didn't need access to any of their networks, or I could use the Wi-Fi or whatever. At any rate, when I finally got through it, I called up another friend who worked at the same company at the time, and I said loudly, I said, hey, you know how 80% of all security violations in a company are done by insiders? Well, now I have a badge. That got me some stern looks, as you might imagine. Okay, let's move on to the next section. I've mentioned a few times I've been working on this question bank for my upcoming new releases of some of my video courses, and I fundamentally disagree with the entire philosophy of a question bank. I mean, that makes sense for undergrads. It makes sense for college students. It makes sense for a certification course. If everybody wants sample questions then. But a self-assessment test for adults taking a training class violates my sense of propriety, because they're there because they have a problem to solve, and you're there to help customize what you're teaching so that they can solve it. They're not there to learn some body of material that you have to insist that they master. No. Besides, in training classes, I'm not grading you, you're grading me. It's a very different approach, and therefore I didn't want to do these question banks. I mean, why are they doing that? It's probably because some manager wants to find out what their own employees learned, and I would often reply, well, then just ask your employees. Was it worth it? Was it a good class? Did you learn what you needed to learn? Why go to all this trouble to, well, let's put it this way. I've clearly lost that battle. So fine. I have to make this question bank. And therefore, I thought I'd simplify my life by using one of the AI tools like ChatGPT or Bard or Claude or any of the others. And it was just another excuse to interact with all of those. And that has been quite the adventure. Well, this week I finally wrapped up the question bank for the Spring and Spring Boot course update I've been doing. At least for the moment. We'll see. They'll probably come back with some edits they want or whatever. But my goodness, I was really disappointed in the quality of the questions generated by the AI tool. As I put it here, I was hoist by my own Picard. Yes. And that figured, what the heck, this time I went to Midjourney and I just put in the phrase hoist by my own Picard. And this is one of the 4 images it came up with. And I thought that looked pretty good, actually. But you can see how much nicer these images are than anything Dall-E comes up with. I thought this was going to save me tons of time, even using GPT-4, but no. And GPT-4, of course, has the big problem that the training set ended over 2 years ago. And therefore, anything newer than that, it doesn't know about. And that turns out to be a problem as well. Those people who are worried about artificial general intelligence taking over the world, you should see some of the terrible questions that these things generated. And just foolhardy and stupid. Yeah, I think we've got time. Okay, let's do our Toots and Skeets now. I thought this was an elegant solution. The caption here says, how else would I keep my solar panels in the sun all day? And of course, you can see there's a bunch of cats with solar panels attached to their back. And of course, they're always moving to be in the sun. So, seems like a good solution to me. That ought to do it. This was great. I've never seen this cartoonist before. I think the cartoon is at pizzacakecomic.com, but it only comes out weekly. I'm going to have to look into that one. It's a woman saying to, clearly the former Twitter bird, someone's posing as me on Twitter. You can see in the picture up in the corner. Can I magnify this one? Yes. It says, hail Elon, right? Someone's posing as me on Twitter, and the bird says, ooh, I'll investigate right away, this fraud report. And then it says fart sounds, and it's being tossed into the trash. And then the Twitter bird says, can I have some money? And Boy, doesn't that just say it all? Yep, I totally get that. This is the week I knew that Musk's daughter had come out as trans. I had no idea that partly that occurring was at least one of the motivations, supposedly, for Elon wanting to buy Twitter and destroy it, for spreading this woke mind virus. Or, I mean, anybody who uses the term woke unironically, yeah, that's highly suspect. I've been told by my son I cannot refer to things as sus because I'm simply in the wrong age group for that. So I'll just tell you that fact and leave it to you. Apparently, after he purchased Twitter 4 days later, she filed for papers to disown him as for parental rights or whatever. I like the cartoon anyway. This was very clever. It says integer underflow for the win. This is a community chess card from a fake Monopoly game. 64-bit integer underflow in your favor. Collect 18 trillion quadrillion. What is it? Let's see. 1,000, million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion. So what is it, about $18.5 quintillion? Or maybe it's one for whatever it is. It's a big number. According to Wikipedia, an integer underflow occurs when storing a value lesser than the minimum supported value. For example, when we try to store negative 129 to a signed character data type, it gets stored as 127 due to the underflow. I'm still not sure how we would wind up with a giant number like that, although I guess 64-bit, that's that could be a long. So maybe, at any rate, I'd be willing to try to get an error like that in my favor. The next one, this would be bad, except that anything that happens to Putin's Russia is a good thing. It says Putin's colonel killed in drone strike while mowing lawn at his Russian residence. And the caption is what made the whole gag. The caption on the toot I saw was the colonel's wife saying, "Would it kill you to mow the lawn?" And clearly the answer turned out to be yes. So Slava Ukraine, or however they would say it. This one said, hideous, you say? It says this was again a toot that said, just fell asleep at the beach and woke up with a hideous tan line. And of course, if you have a math background, you can see that that is a graph of the tangent function between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. If you have a math background and remember your trig functions, that's funny, but it's a seriously old geek joke. But as I say, I'm a seriously old geek. Oh well. Speaking of old jokes, we have this one, which is the Wolfman saying knock knock, and Frankenstein says, who's there? Who? Werewolves of London. Yeah, who? Werewolves of London. Yeah, okay. Old music reference. But I do hear that song periodically. We actually used to do it in the Null Pointers. And this is all I'm going to think of from now on. I hope this email finds you well. This post said, your email may have found me, but it will never take me alive. And yeah, it seems a little extreme, but yeah, there are days I could sympathize with that. And then finally, this one that said, there's this clever idea. Let me see if I can magnify that too. And as you can see, it is a bunch of horses playing people shoes rather than people playing horseshoes. That would be complicated because, the lack of opposable thumbs is going to be a bit of an issue. But hey, one of the horses got it right on the pole there. I'm impressed. So I thought that was very clever. Have a great week, everybody. There'll be at least one technical video this week. Also, of course, I start my Trinity class, so I'll be recovering from that. Today being Labor Day means that the class didn't start today. It's going to be Monday, Wednesday nights. So Wednesday will be my first class. This being Labor Day, let me say that one of the people I follow on Substack, yep, this is the one, Craig Calcaterra put up this nice his newsletter today. He usually writes about baseball, but it is Labor Day. And he wrote a very interesting note about Labor Day 2023 and the massive debt that we all owe to the labor movement and how the strength of the labor movement really does correlate to economic success. It certainly does something about our massive income inequality in this country. Again, I'm speaking of the U.S., but probably true everywhere. And at any rate, I thought it was really good, and I will include a link to this post in the show notes. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.